Good afternoon, dear students. Happy to be once again. Happy to see you all once again. And today, the class as usual is for class 8. And we are going to discuss a new lesson. The name of the lesson is Chief Seattle's Speech. Before we begin the lesson, I would like to give you one information, and that is, if you go to the United States of America, you will find a city. The name of the city is Seattle. So how does this city get its name? How did it get its name? The name comes from this particular person, that is Chief Seattle. So it is named after him in order to pay him some respect, in order to honor him. But why did they honor him? What was the kind of work that he did, and what was his contribution so that he could be honored? Well, that is this whole lesson. That's all this whole lesson is about. That's all the lesson is about. You see, Theodore Roosevelt was one of the presidents of the United States of America. Theodore Roosevelt. So when Theodore Roosevelt was in power, when he was the president of the United States of America, he wanted to buy some land from this chief, that is Chief Seattle. Now, why did he want to buy some land? Chief Seattle was the chief of two tribes. He is a Native American Indian. In those days, they were called as Red Indians, but now that term being an offensive one, we avoid it. Rather, we call the people as Native American Indians. So, Chief Seattle was a Native American Indian chief. Now, he was a chief of two tribes. One of the tribes was known as the Suquamish tribe, and the other one was known as the Duwamish tribe. So, two tribes, Suquamish and Duwamish, and Chief Seattle was the chief of both these tribes. So, as you know, the tribals or the Native American Indians, they loved their land. They are very, very attached to their land. They don't exploit the land for their personal gains. Well, they live with nature. They give importance to nature. They consider nature to be their mother. And they consider all that is natural, be it the birds that sing in the sky, in the air, be it the trees that you find in the woods, be it the murmuring brooks, the flowing rivers, the mighty mountains, the snow that covers these mountains, everything, the creatures that inhabit the woods, everything that is of nature is sacred to them. They consider them as sacred. They call them as their brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers. So that is the relationship the Native American Indians have towards nature. So, President Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, is making a demand. Is making a demand to this chief. Now, what is the demand? He has to give the land that was occupied by his people. So, the instruction comes through the governor of the United States, a particular region, and the governor brings the letter and hands it over to Chief Seattle. Now, having read the letter, the chief writes another letter to him. Of course, he is not educated, he is not literate, but he gave a speech, and the speech was recorded. It was made in the year 1854. And many writers have translated that speech. That is a speech that we are having. In fact, it's a very long speech, a lot of details are included in that. But since you are in class 8, it has been abridged. It has been made small and given in a nutshell. But what is the theme of the lesson? This is a theme. The chief does not want to sell the land because he considers the land as the land of their ancestors. And since it is considered as the land of their ancestors, he believes the land cannot be sold. He considers the earth to be his mother. And he considers the dust to be the dust of his ancestors. So he says, when we step on the dust of this earth, we are stepping on the blood and body of our ancestors. So he makes a very, very important point. He says, we don't own nature. We have no ownership over nature. Be it the rivers or the mountains or the brooks or the lakes or the woods or whatever belongs to nature. We don't have an ownership. We are not the proprietors or we are not the owners. So if we don't own anything, how can we sell? I hope you got the point. The president is asking for the land and he promises them that another piece of land would be given to them and they all would be rehabilitated or they would be settled. But the chief very politely says that it is not possible. It is simply not possible because the land is the land of their ancestors and the land cannot be purchased and he cannot part from the land. Okay? So, the point is a very valid point. When something which doesn't belong to you is being demanded from you and you are asked to sell that, how can you do that? Because you are not the owner. So if you are not the owner, how will you sell it? That was the question put to President Theodore Roosevelt by this great chief, that is Seattle. So he says, nature is the memory of people. Our mothers, our fathers, our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers, our uncles, our aunts, all those who are dead, they are buried in the dust. So they are mingled with the dust. Their bodies are there still lying in the dust. And how can you, O great chief, the word great chief refers to the president. So Chief Seattle is addressing Theodore Roosevelt, the president of the United States of America, as the great chief. And he says, O great chief, how can you expect me to sell this land to you when the land that I live is the land of my ancestors and the dust that I step on is the blood and body of my ancestors. So they are all mixed here in the dust. Their spirits are hovering around us. Their spirits are talking to us. We listen to the spirit, we listen to their sound, we listen to their voice through the trees, through the rivers, through the mountains. When the winds blow, it is the voice of my ancestors. So how can you ask me to sell this land to you? You cannot protect us. That is what he says. Land is sacred to us. It is very, very holy to us. And we cannot sell anything that is holy. The water of the rivers is the blood of our ancestors. See how he compares nature. It is not just water that is flowing in the form of rivers, but it is the blood that flows. It is the blood of our ancestors. So, we cannot sell this land. So, keep this point in mind. President Theodore Roosevelt, in the year 1854, I believe, asked the chief, that is Chief Seattle, to sell the land. And Chief Seattle was in charge. He was the chief of two, tribes which go by the names Suquamish and Duwamish. And he simply refuses to sell the land. And the reasons that he gives for not selling it are these. He says that if we do not own nature, how can we sell them? Point number 2, the land is sacred to us. And our ancestors, their spirits are still, they are present here in the woods. They are there on the mountains. They are there in the rivers that flow, the mighty rivers. So they are all around us and we keep listening to their voices. They come to visit us every night. The children who are dead and gone thousands and thousands of years ago, who had departed from this earth, but they are also there. They come to us in the form of spirits. So please, great chief, do not press upon this issue. Don't force me to sell the land. And he also says, be kind to your brothers. Whom does he mean by the word brothers? It is not brothers and sisters, the human beings that he talks to, but he says, rivers are our brothers. So we live with them. And how can I separate myself from my brothers or sisters? How can I separate from my ancestors who are still living in the midst of us? How can I do that? So he very flatly and politely refuses to sell the land. You see, a man who is not educated, but the kind of attachment and love that he has towards nature. He might have got a very good amount of money, or he might have got a bigger piece of land, but still he did not want to compromise with the sale of land. And he says that environment is all that we have. It is a gift that God has given to us. And our God and your God, they are different. Our God loves everybody. Our God is not partial. Our God is coming to us every day to talk to us. So, it is our God who visits this land, and therefore I cannot sell this land. And you see, the great chief is interested in buying, and the chief says, these white people, you white brothers, he calls them as brothers. He says, you are not my enemies, you are my friends. But you white brothers, you don't understand the value of the land. How is it that you don't understand the value of the land? You keep on conquering land after land. You fight battles, win the land, and then you keep on moving. You are not attached to the land. You have no love and affection for the land. But with us, it's not that. We live with the land, they are part of us, and they are our brothers and sisters, and the water that runs in the rivers is the blood of our brothers, and the dust that we see is the body and blood of our ancestors. So we cannot just leave this land. And he says, earth is not your friend but your enemy. He tells the white people, for you white brothers, earth is not your friend, it is your enemy, because you want to fight and you want to acquire the land, and once you acquire the land, you will put up buildings. You will develop that. You will build houses. You will lay electric posts. And then you will carry out all developmental activities, forgetting that the land is your mother. The rivers are your brothers and sisters. You forget that. You don't leave the earth as it should be left. So you are the enemies of the environment. You are not the friends of earth, but enemies of environment. And therefore, this chief Seattle refuses very flatly to sell the land. So he talks on many points. The key point is that I and earth, they cannot be separated. I and my earth cannot be separated because the earth is my mother. How can I sell my mother? The river that flows is the blood of my brothers. How can I sell the rivers? And the spirits come down to us and talk to us every night. How can I say goodbye to them? These are the points that Chief Seattle insists upon. So by giving these various reasons, he says, sorry, I cannot compromise with you and the land cannot be sold. So my dear my dear students, with this point we close today. We'll wind up the class today. From tomorrow onwards, we will discuss the exact words written by Chief Seattle. I just gave you an overall view today as to what this lesson is all about. And I hope you must have got an idea. It is about selling the land. The American president asked the Native American chief, that is Seattle, to sell the land, and he refuses. And why did he refuse? He gives all these reasons. He says, nature is my mother and it is a memory of my ancestors, so I cannot sell them. So with this thought, let's wind up today's class. And tomorrow we will be discussing some more of the statements which Chief Seattle made to the President of the United States of America, that is Theodore Roosevelt. So till then, you stay safe at home and kindly give a thorough reading, because without reading you won't understand. And once you have completed reading, you will get a clear idea. And tomorrow I will make the lesson more easier for you to understand by elaborating or explaining the speech. So stay safe and goodbye.